Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Paul James Caden, and today we're going to do a little bit of a spin-off show based on the overwhelming response to the last podcast, which was the Bible. Is it the handbook of the elites? A lot of folks emailed, commented on Facebook, or sent me private messages through Facebook Messenger. And I was surprised how many of you out there have said you believe that the Bible is the handbook of the elites, that a lot of these documents were doctored and played with to lay out the agenda of the elitists and to kind of put the masses under a hypnotic spell of religion so they don't fight back. They don't rebel. They don't rise up and say, hey, what are you doing? And there were quite a number of folks who feel that a lot of these things that are happening in our world that appear to be biblical prophecy coming to pass is actually man-made prophecy coming to pass. As these people go forth with their agendas of depopulation and whatever else they have going on. But this really got the gears turning in my mind when I thought about what this next episode would be about. And I think the next logical step to talk about after a podcast like that would be to really address this notion that has been pounded into each and every one of our heads all of our lives for generations. And that is that we can't trust ourselves. We need all of these exterior things in order to have a connection or a relationship with God. And I've always found that very interesting because most of our great religious teachers and sages have all taught that basically the words of Christ be in the world but not of it. It's listening to the still small voice within. It's, God, the Father, the Spirit within you. But we're always told to ignore that and chase after these exterior things that are supposed to bring us enlightenment or salvation or make us more pleasing to God. Just for example, look at the church. The church in the Bible is largely described as being made up of the people of God that are filled with the Spirit of God. But yet, in the world, in society, we have men and organizations building these brick and mortar buildings and saying, this is the church. And many of them say, well, you can't obtain salvation, you can't be pleasing to God if you don't come to church or if you don't come to the brick and mortar building. And then it gets a little deeper than that. You can't have salvation, you can't have a relationship with God unless you come to the brick and mortar building of a certain denomination. So it just goes further and further down the rabbit hole with this is what you need. You need to go to this physical building, this physical place in order to have any kind of connection or acceptance by the divine. And there's another really good example of this. This was probably back in 2002, 2003, when the book A Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren came out, and it was very popular. It was everywhere. People on TV were talking about it. If you watch religious shows, they were always talking about it. They were interviewing Rick Warren. All the local churches, were talking about the book or giving away free copies or discounted copies, at least where I lived. And everybody seemed to have a copy of, The Purpose-Driven Life. And at that particular time in my life, I was, exiting out of what I call churchianity. And a lot of people that I knew, relatives or, family, friends that went to church, they were reading the book or had read the book. And they were saying, oh, it's so wonderful. You have to read it. And so I broke down and said, I'll give it a look. If it's that good, I mean, what is this guy saying in this book? It must be pretty powerful message. I wasn't anti-Christian, even though I was, leaving the church life, brand religion labeled Christianity. So I got a copy of The Purpose-Driven Life, and I was lucky that I found one. It was a paperback in a used bookstore where I used to live for 50 cents. So that was, money well spent on that book, I guess, that I didn't pay full price. Because as I read this book, I got to a point where author Rick Warren was talking about that, putting forth these ideas like to be an independent thinker was wrong and rebellious to God. And it would set you up for, of course, to be attacked by the enemy, deceived by the devil. You couldn't do this. You couldn't be an independent thinker. You needed the church. You needed, a pastor, someone to instruct you in the ways of God, explain to you the Bible, give you the doctrines correctly so you weren't deceived. And so anything outside of that, there's no speculating, there's no independent thinking. This is wrong. Mr. Warren also went on to say in the book that if you didn't go to church, you were like an organ that was separated from the body, and you would spiritually wither and die. Because outside of the local church, or going to a local church, there was no spiritual life. That's where the power was. That's where the life source was. That's where, in the community of believers, that's where God was. And so that's where you got the messages and the fellowship and the spiritual life and the spiritual energy. And without that, you would just wither up and die, like an organ separated from the body. And certainly he had many other things to say along these lines. And once I reached these points in the book, I very quickly closed the covers and, filed it under G, which is the garbage bin, if you don't know what that is. I was absolutely appalled by, what I had read. But this is the way of the world. This is the way of the world's religions. Most of them, not all of them. We're always told you have to go to this building, whether it's a church or a temple or a synagogue or a mosque. You need these certain books or holy books. You have to read it, and it's not good enough to just read it. No, that's never good enough in any of the Abrahamic religions. You have to have it properly explained to you by the organizations. And then, and only then, maybe you might be acceptable to God and make it into heaven or paradise and whatever comes next. And it's never good enough for you as the individual to try to live a good life, to believe in God, to read the Torah, the Tanakh, the Bible, the Quran. It's never good enough to do any of those things. You still need more. You need the organizations, you need the buildings, you need the priests and the pastors and the imams, and you need the leaders of the religion to espouse it to you, or explain it to you so you know exactly how to follow. And the last place you're ever told to seek truth or connection with God is within yourself. And religion seems to go to very great lengths to tell us you can only trust us and what we tell you. You can only trust how we interpret these sacred scriptures. You can only trust our version, our denomination, our doctrines. You can't trust yourself, because that's where, again, there's that proverb in the Old Testament. There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. And that seems to be the thing. You can't do it on your own. You can't think on your own, because now you're going to get out into being deceived. You're going to get into heresy. You're going to get into, you're going to get everything wrong. And you're just going to end up in hell, the burning lake of fire, a cast out whom God wants nothing to do with. And they go to the great lengths to tell us anything that makes us focus within. Meditation, that's a cult, that's from the devil. Hypnosis, that's a cult, that's from the devil. Even mysticism in their own branches of religion that do meditation and contemplation on the scriptures, they're wrong. That's of the devil. That has no place in Christianity. That has no place in Islam. Why these people that call themselves mystics, they're not even Christians or Muslims. They're heretics. If you get a hunch, if you get an intuition, if you get that feeling within yourself, well, don't listen to it. That could be the devil. You best how we interpret it, or what we tell you need to do. But here's the question I would pose to those people. If we can't trust ourselves, if man is this horribly sinful, rotten, stupid being that the devil is constantly hovering over our heads, ready to deceive us if we have one independent thought about anything, then how do we know that the crap you're telling us is true? How do we know you're not deceived? And how do we know you're not passing wrong, deceptive information on to us? And maybe the long line of people that you might look to and say, oh, way, way back, the founding fathers and these people, they taught this. Well, how do we know they weren't deceived? How do we know that they weren't being independent thinkers that screwed everything all up, and then they passed it on to the rest of us? And here we are today. I would say look at the fruits of most religion. And, it kind of seems that might be the case. Look at this jackass preacher that was just in the news the other day saying he thinks the coronavirus was God's death angel to purge a lot of sin from the earth. Oh, these sinful people. I'd rather not worship that kind of God. I'd rather not have that kind of religion. Gee, do you think that guy might be deceived? I kind of think so. Do you think these people might be deceived that are sitting around having the gall to say, well, you don't believe like I believe. You don't have the same Savior that I have. You're wicked, you're evil, you're going to hell. You're all a bunch of, whatever. Might we be deceived in thinking that? How does that even stack up with the message of love, or God is love? How do we know that running around all this stuff, that meditation, that's from the devil. That's the occult. Oh, don't do that hypnosis or self-hypnosis. Oh, that's the occult. Don't do anything that would make you delve within yourself and observe and listen. Oh, because that's occultic. Here's something for the folks who might believe that. Let's take hypnosis, for example. Because you're listening to a person talking on this podcast who does meditate, and I do practice self-hypnosis. I'm a certified hypnotist. Now, here's what you don't know. Hypnosis is actually quite scientific. Because did you know that hypnosis is not what you see on Hollywood movies? Someone putting somebody in that deep trance. They have no control over their body. Bark like a dog, cluck like a chicken, go out and kill so-and-so. Yes, master. That's fiction. And if you really believe that that's what hypnosis is, or some religious group told you that that's what it is, I think you need to go back to school and learn a thing or two. Because hypnosis is just a very relaxed, concentrated state of mind. Now, it does make you or the subconscious more susceptible to certain images or suggestions. But here's the thing. If you were in the room with me right now, and I were to hypnotize you, get you in a deep state of hypnosis, and I were to tell you, okay, I'm going to count to 10. I'm going to wake you up. You're going to go home and you're going to do harm to one of your family members. Immediately, what would happen is that you would bring yourself out of hypnosis, because your mind and your subconscious mind would reject that particular suggestion. And you would say straight out, what are you, crazy? What are you, sick? Whatever. See, you have to want to accept the suggestions that the hypnotist gives you. If you want to lose weight, you go under hypnosis, you're given the suggestions, and you're open to them because you want these suggestions. This is your goal. You want to have help in losing weight through hypnosis. You'll never do anything that's against your character. You'll never do anything that is against your morality. You'll never do anything that is against your religion. Period. The only way to get somebody to do something like that, go against, their morals or, their religion, would be somebody that's maybe not wrapped too tight. Or if you were to subject them to a lot of sleep deprivation, drugs really wear them down where they have no mental constitution left to resist. And that would be pretty much the only way. The next thing is, did you know that your brain spirals through all the different wavelengths, we'll say, the brain waves? Every day, when you go to sleep, when you watch TV, when you read a book, you spiral through the brain waves of alpha, beta, theta, delta. If you're watching a movie, if you're sitting there looking at things on Facebook or online and you're all engrossed on your phone, chances are you're in a pretty deep alpha state. You're in a light hypnotic trance. So is your brain inherently evil because it's spiraling down into alpha or even a deeper alpha? As you fall asleep, you spiral down from alpha, beta, theta, delta, and very, very deep, deep sleep. I guess that would make your brain satanic because it does these things naturally. When you go to church or go to a religious meeting and you're transfixed by the pastor, you're hanging on every word he says, you're just keyed in, man. You're in a state of light hypnosis. I guess that religious service is satanic. It's demonic. It's a cult. And it's the same with meditation. The benefits, how it works, the scientific research and the studies. But we don't care about that because we've swallowed the lie that we're not allowed to do these things because they're bad, they're satanic, they're occultic, the devil's going to get us, the demons are going to come and carry us away. And so we just keep chasing after the carrot on the stick. The brick and mortar building that's called the church, the synagogue, the mosque. The book that came off of a printing press and somebody chucked it down in front of us and said, hey, you want to know God? Read this. But you better not read it by yourself. You better check in with us to tell you what it really says. And it goes back to something I harp on this show all the time. And that's people always looking for a leader. Always looking for somebody to tell them what to do. No, I only follow the Lord. No, you don't. You're following somebody's idea about the Lord, most people. Because they have things so ass backwards, they couldn't even possibly be talking about the same Jesus that you would read about in the Gospels. And then we wonder why. Again, look at the fruits of this kind of thing. Look at all these people that are running after preachers and pastors and priests and whomever, listening to all these bozo televangelists, always looking for somebody to tell them what the truth is. But you say to them, hey, have you ever kind of meditated or, really meditatively contemplated the scriptures? Oh, no. No, I believe that's evil. Isn't that an occult practice? See, automatically they're afraid. Anything that turns from that exterior and makes them go inward, they're deathly afraid of. But yet look at the result. As I've said in one of my other podcasts, we see all the people that are going inward. They're not out there starting holy wars. They're not out there saying the coronavirus is God's death angel to wipe out all kinds of sin on the earth. They're not out there saying America's the great Satan and this country needs to die and these people need to die and these people are going to be enslaved when the Messiah comes back and this and this and this, hating one another, dividing one another into color and religion and sex and class and whatever way they can divide it. And then sit there and wave their holy books, praise Allah, praise the Lord Jesus Christ. Glory be to Jehovah, we're the chosen ones. The rest of you bastards are all going to die. And we're glad. We're going to watch it and smile because we're chosen. Yeah, that's the fruits of exterior religion. And all those kind of people are pointing at everybody else, talking about how evil and occultic and satanic they are. And these people aren't doing anything. They're minding their own business. Just trying to have a connection and a relationship with God, with the higher power of the universe. These people have peace. These people live quiet lives. They're not out there, as some of these religious conspiracy theorists think, hiding behind every bush, whispering to one another, yeah, we're just laying in wait till we can take over the world for the Antichrist. Yeah, it's not happening. That's superstitious nonsense that's been pounded into people's heads. And it's the lie they've been distracted with all of their lives. I just want you to remember a couple of things after you listen to this podcast. Remember that Jesus said, it's the Father in me that does the works. Christ in you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Buddha's followers came to him before he died, and they said, when you pass away, whom should we follow? And he said, you don't have need to follow anybody else. Follow the Buddha within. You have the Dharma. It's all you need. Follow the Buddha within. Muhammad said that the world is your mosque. Doesn't matter if you're in a building, in the wilderness, in the desert, wherever you kneel, wherever you bow, wherever you pray to God, that is your mosque. And here's another piece of news for a lot of people in the world today. All these individuals that are, look at these New Agers, look at, these occultists. Their biggest thing is these people. Most of them are just trying to expand their consciousness. What does that mean to them? Rising their thoughts, rising their mind to connect with God. Listening to the still small voice within, listening to the intuition, listening to inner guidance, tuning into how they feel morally about things around them. Now, they might use different methods to accomplish that, and we're not talking about black magic and all that kind of thing here. We're talking about people just trying to be in tune with the higher power of the universe. Live in peace, live in love, have something more in their lives than this world has to offer them. And they know no matter where they go, no matter where they are, they carry that spark of divinity, that spirit within, always within themselves. They can be in the middle of the woods, on a city street, alone in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't matter. They can always tune in, however it is they tune in, and find guidance and comfort and peace. So it sounds like some of these people that a lot of folks are running around calling occultists and New Agers and all this kind of nonsense might have it a little more figured out than they do. Because they're chasing the lie that they've been distracted with, the carrot on the stick. Don't do that. Don't have your own relationship. Don't seek anything outside of us. You do what we tell you. You need this. You need our man behind the pulpit. You need our building. You need our book. You need our doctrines. You need our traditions. But look at the fruit of it. I keep saying that over and over again. Look at the fruit of that kind of thing. And then look at the people who you call the New Agers and the occultists and the heathens. And by the way, do yourself a favor. Don't throw all those kind of people in the same category with the people that practice black magic, voodoo, all this harmful kind of, magical stuff. Don't lump all those people in with the government and the elitists and all their crazy occult practices and philosophies that they have trying to take over the world, because a lot of these people don't want anything to do with the government either. They know the government's crooked. They know there's stuff going on behind the scenes that's not kosher. They know that history has been one big mess because of these people in charge. They know that if you dabble in things like black magic and heavy-duty dark occultism, you're going to get your ass in trouble, and they stay away from it. So don't be that ignorant where you lump everybody into the same loaf of bread or the same lump of dough, whatever you want to call it, because that's just ignorance. And that's part of buying and chasing the lie that always distracts you. Hey, you're not following the same carrot on the stick I am. There's something wrong with you. You're part of the bad guys. Sounds pretty ignorant, does it? Because it is. Always telling us to look everywhere for God except within. Anywhere else is fine, as long as it's out there, as long as it's exterior. So you might want to ask yourself, why have all the great sages talked about within? But all of the religious leaders and even many of the people who were supposed to be founding fathers of the religion of these sages and religious figures all very early started, oh no, it's without, it's exterior. You need to do these certain things. You need to be baptized. You need to be submerged in water. I talked to somebody just a couple weeks ago that told me that, well, I believe, you have to be baptized. If you're not baptized and have all your sins washed away by the baptism waters, there's no hope for you. You're not going to heaven. So you mean to tell me if someone's physical body isn't dunked in physical water by a physical man saying a prayer over him or whatever, again, he's the organ cast out from the body. He withers, he dies. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's never about the inner state of the person. It's never about seeking within. It's never about the heart. It's never about what's going on inside of us, what changes we're making, what reforms we're making, what things we're throwing out of our lives that might be bad for us, trying to be better people. It's never about that. It's never about anything that goes on within the mind, the heart, or the soul. It's always the junk that's out there that matters. All the physical stuff. And then we wonder why there's so much confusion. And why you have people, running around saying they believe in God, but they'll kill other people. I mean, I knew a Muslim guy who lived in the UK. No, I'm sorry, he lived in Russia. He was a Muslim who lived in Russia, and he had two friends who were Christian. And there was somebody who did one of the Christian gentleman's family members wrong. And they went and they actually beat this man, and he ended up dying. And they weren't caught. But somehow, whether they told this gentleman who was their friend who was a Muslim, and he said to them, he said, you guys are supposed to be Christians. How could you do that? How could you, jump this man in the middle of the night, beat him? He died. How do you live with that? And he said the answer was, well, yes, it was wrong, but, we'll just repent and plead the blood of Christ, and, we'll be okay. God will forgive us. And it's amazing. It is amazing how many Christians and Jews and Muslims have that mindset. I'll steal, I'll lie, I'll oppress other people, I'll kill other people, I'll pray for their damnation, I'll pray for them to be destroyed by God, I'll have all these evil thoughts and evil acts and evil intents, but it doesn't matter because I have the right religion. I go through the right rituals. I can say the right prayer and be forgiven afterwards. You see that, folks? Exterior, the lie, exterior. Nothing's changed inside of those people. Nothing in the mind or the heart or the soul or the landscape within has changed in those people. They're still mean, rotten, murderous, dishonest, hateful. But they think because they wear the right religious badge, chase after the right carrot dangling on the right stick, that it's all going to be okay. And folks, that's not the way it works. That is the lie that has distracted people all of their lives and led them astray. And it's leading many astray, even in our world today. And this is supposed to be the age of science and education and technology. But yet look how superstitious and dumbed down we are. That we can't come to that conclusion on our own. It's about what's going on within us, the state of our soul, not what we're following or chasing after or believing or the rituals we're going through in the exterior religious world. We just can't come to that conclusion. Because somebody told us, a man, that this is how it's done, and we believed it. Oh, but goodness gracious, there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it only leads to death. Let's look in that mirror for a minute. And while we look in that mirror, let me just say, once again, I hope you got something out of this podcast. I appreciate you listening. Again, let me know your thoughts on all of this. Comment, email, friend me on Facebook, message me. I like to hear from you guys. It's always a pleasure. I read everyone's comments. I try to get back to everybody. I like to know what you think about these things. So really, think about the things that we talked about in this show today, because I think they're important. And I think we really need to get more people to understand the truth and the reality of all of this. So until next time, stay safe out there, everybody. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Spirit Side.